Hi everybody, this is Scott Sharp with Fretboard Toolbox, and today we're going to look at soloing in the key of G major for beginners. We'll use a G major pentatonic and the G major scale, and we'll also use a little modified 3-note scale to help get you started. So we'll play along with a bunch of free jam tracks, and I'll show you how to access all those, and hopefully by the end you'll have some cool ideas to get started with. Let's take a look and I'll show you how it works. Today we're going to use the Fretboard Toolbox Complete Guitar Book, and we're going to use the key of G major. And the Complete Guitar books have all of the major keys, all of the relative minor keys, and all the blues keys, and it shows you which chords make up those keys and what notes make up the chords and what chords sound good together, and the soloing scales all on one page each. And we'll be using these free jam tracks. So to find those, you go to the Fretboard Toolbox website and you go to Tracks and Tabs and click on 200 free jam tracks, and I've got jam tracks for all sorts of keys here. So we got G and A and C, D, E and F, and the relative minors and some rule breaking chords, and then a bunch of blues tracks. But today we're just going to use this straight G major, and we're going to click on the key of G major in the Fretboard Toolbox book. And what I want you to notice here is these are the 6 main chords. Forget the one in italics, that's outside of the key. These are the 6 main chords that make up the key. And then if you look here, it says what are your major scale notes and what are your major pentatonic notes. So major scale notes in my books are everything in white boxes, and the major pentatonic notes are the underlined notes. So the G major scale is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then the G major pentatonic is just the underlines. So it's G, A, B, skip the C or the 4 note, D and E, and then skip the 7, the F sharp. And we'll be playing these chord progressions here. These are the same ones from the jam tracks. So we'll just start with a straight G major chord here, and down at the fretboard layout you'll see all the notes in white boxes are your G major scale notes. So this will make some more sense as we get started, but what I want you to do at first is I want you to we're going to first play just the 1, 2, and 3 note, and so just G, A, and B in the key of G. And notice that that's part of the major scale in white boxes, and it's part of the major pentatonic. So that's a real safe place to get started, and it's amazing how many songs you can solo with just playing those 3 notes. And then we'll play a major pentatonic, and then we'll mess around with the whole major scale. So we'll keep that pattern, the 3-note scale, the major pentatonic, and then the whole major scale. So let's get started, and I'm going to just play G, A, and B, or G, A, and B here to get started. And then we'll play G major pentatonic, G, A, B, D, E, G, and then we'll play the whole major scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. And I can play those all over the place. We'll mess around with them down here too, but we'll just, at the very beginning, we'll just mess with these first 3 notes. So let's start here with this G major track. We'll play it here at the 2nd fastest speed, and we'll start with just G, A, B. So you want to be able to slide, and if you can't slide, just play single notes. And if you can hammer on, and then I'll play some major pentatonic. And this little D, E right here is a nice little way to get up to the G. And here's a great slide. Now the whole major scale. So today's goal is not for you to play every note I'm playing, because you can pause right here and open up the jam tracks on your own and just leave this fretboard up. It's just so that you can start seeing where are those notes that are in the key and where can I find those all over the fretboard. So that was the G, just the G major. And the other thing I want you to pay attention to is what notes make up the chords. So G major's made of G, B, and D. Those notes are going to sound best over the G major. And then for this progression here, when it goes G major, D major, G major, when it goes to the D major, D, F sharp, and A are going to sound best. So what that means is when I play that little 3-note scale, the G and the B are going to sound really good over the G major chord, and then the A note is going to sound really good over the D major. And then for the major pentatonic, G, A, for the G major chord, G, B, and D are going to sound really good. And for the D major chord, the D and the A are going to sound really good. And then for the major scale, you can see all the notes in there. So let's get started, and I'll just play along here, and we'll start with that 3-note scale, and then we'll move to the major pentatonic, and then we'll play the whole major scale. So here's your 3-note scale here, G, A, B. Now it's on a D. Now it's on a G, and it stays on a G for a minute. Still on a G. Now let's play the whole major pentatonic. Now let's try that little pentatonic slide right here. All right, let's play that one more time, but let's do it with the whole major scale. Whole major scale. Now listen to the notes of just the D major chord. So that was F sharp, A, D. So you can play just the notes of the chord. There's G, A, or G, B, D. So it's really cool to be able to see what notes make up the chord, because then it really starts adding some cool sounds to your soloing scales. Like you can just play just straight G major pentatonic or G major scale over this whole thing, but when you start targeting some of those chord notes, that's when the sounds get a lot cooler. So let's play a 1-4-5 progression. So that's G major, C major, D major. We've seen the G and the D, but when it goes to the C major, C, E, and G are going to sound good. So on that little 3-note scale, just that G, the G will sound the best over the C major chord. And then when we go to the major pentatonic, the G and the E are going to sound really good. And then for the D major, we've seen that's D and A over the major pentatonic. And then for the whole major scale, you can see all those chord notes and see which notes to target. So when you're kind of soloing, and you get to like a C major chord, hit that C chord, and then try some notes from the scale. And then when you go to the D, Try some notes from the scale over those chords and kind of mix the chords in there, and it'll do a lot for your ear. So let's try this G, C, D, and we're going to play just the G, A, and B first, then the major pentatonic, then the whole major scale. It's on a C right now. On D, back to G, G, over the C, D. Now let's try the whole major pentatonic. And now I'll just mess with that major pentatonic. Now let's do the whole major scale. So again, I'm just messing around with those notes that are in the key. I'm trying to focus on some chord notes, and then sometimes it sounds good to have some tension when you're playing a non-chord note, but being able to come back to these guys is really where a lot of the bread and butter of cool soloing comes from. So let's try the 1-5-4 progression. So that's G major, D major, C major. And we'll do the 3-note scale, then the major pentatonic, then the whole scale. It's on the G, D, on the C, back to the G, G, D, now the major pentatonic. Now the whole major scale. It's on the G, on the D, C, back to the G. So if you find something that I played that you liked, use that little gear in the corner of your YouTube page and slow the speed down to 50% or 75% and see if you can figure out what I did. But every note that I played is in a white box here, and lots of the notes I played were focused on those chord notes and then using the other notes in white boxes to jump around. So let's try a couple more. Let's play a 1-6-4-5. And so when it goes to the 6th chord, that's E, G, and B. So on that little 3-note scale, that G and B is going to sound really good. So let's see how that works. Now on the E minor, on the C, on the D, G, minor, on the C, now the major pentatonic, the whole major scale. And then notice that like at that very end there, when it went D back to G, like I threw in this F sharp, because that da dum, the F sharp part of a D resolves to the G. And that's because if you play this whole major scale, when you get to the F sharp, listen to that note. And that wants you to go back to the G. And so that's why those 5 chords that have an F sharp in them in the key of G, so the D major has an F sharp, and it's that F sharp in a 5 chord that makes you want to go back to 1. So 5, 1. Again, find the chord notes. I promise it's really, really fun, and it's helpful, and it makes your soloing sound like you're playing with the song and not just over the song. So let's do one more here. We'll add a A minor, which is going to be A, C, and E. So same thing we've been doing on all of them. But hopefully you're noticing that little 3-note scale, we can make it work. There's an A minor. No, this is the A minor. Here's G. E minor. Now the whole major pentatonic. Whole major scale, E minor, D, and then I'll play one more here with it just fast and show you just the major pentatonic, and then how much we can get out of that. So I set up this whole thing as just like this Fretboard Toolbox originally, and then all these jam tracks is just a little playground for myself, so that I could have somebody playing guitar for me for hours while I mess around with these scales and make these connections. So I still have a long ways to go. I'm not here as the sage on the hill. It's just I'm here to show you that if you kind of hear what I'm talking about and you kind of hear what I'm playing there, that when you're hitting those notes that are part of the scale, cool things happen. And so a lot of people think like, oh, theory is just too much, it's exhausting, it doesn't really help me, but even the folks that think they don't know any theory, if they play really well, they're using theory and they've just kind of internalized some of those ideas. So that's the big idea, and again, the cool thing about toolboxes is you can see those chords that fit together and those scales for all these different keys, and there's lots of good stuff on the Fretboard Toolbox website to mess around with, and like a whole bunch of free tools that you can use, and all those tracks and tabs, that's a big one. And I've got a theory by handbook, and I do lessons. So if you want to pick up your own toolbox, if you go to the Fretboard Toolbox website and you go to pick your instrument and click on guitar. Then I've got essential and complete books. That's the #1 question I get asked, so be sure to check that out and watch the video and check out the big table showing the differences. And I've got print and ebook options, and you can see all my guitar videos. And on my books, anytime you click look inside, you can download all the key of G major pages for free and all the instructions for any of my books, so you can mess around with it and find out if you think it's useful, and if so, you can pick one up, and if not, you're not out any money. So anyways, I appreciate you stopping by, and I'll be back on more Fretboard Fridays with more videos on more of my favorite instruments.